What is up, Doom Patrol fans? We are back with yet another episode review and breakdown for Doom Patrol Season 2. This time it is Episode 8, Dad Patrol. And it's crazy to think that there's only one more episode left of the season after this. It was supposed to originally have 10 episodes, but then it was cut short because they couldn't finish filming and everything. But it feels like the season just started, but now it's basically over, and that's just insane to think about. But if you watched last week's review that I did for last week's episode, then you probably know that I wasn't too crazy about that episode, and I was a little disappointed, a little bored and confused. But this episode was definitely a major improvement, maybe even the best episode of the season, because this was really, really good, and the season finale will probably top it, but for now, this is my favorite episode of the season. I just really enjoyed this, and it really set up a lot for the season finale, which I loved. And that cliffhanger, wow, just wow, like, ooh, yeah. But anyway, that was amazing. But before I do get into that cliffhanger and everything else that went down in this episode of Doom Patrol, I do have to give a quick spoiler warning here. If you have not yet seen this episode, then go check it out now. And if you're still here, then I assume you've seen the episode. So let's get into everything that went on in this episode of Doom Patrol. So this episode is called Dad Patrol, and it's basically all about the father relationships in the show. And we started off the episode with a flashback to when Kay was still out there in the world, and her father was very abusive, clearly just from what we saw last season, but especially here, as she apparently did something wrong, so he puts her in the bucket, and then sends her down the well, and doesn't take her out till morning. So that's terrible parenting skills. I mean, if you're a father, don't do that. That's not good. That's literally child abuse. But this actually leads into present day in the underground, where Jane is still questioning where everything, all the personalities are going, because last time we saw that Scarlet Harlot went missing, and now some other ones are missing as well, and things are getting pretty shady down there, and they just need to try and keep Kay safe and keep her happy and stuff. So Jane decides that she is going to go get Harry, which is Kay's stuffed animal that she lost when she was sent down the well one time, and he fell out in the water, and he had been lost forever since then. So Jane is like, alright, I'll go find her. And she basically just wants to prove that she is worthy to be primary, and she knows what's best for Kay, and she can do this on her own. And Jane usually teams up with Cliff, but he was busy in this episode with his own daughter, so Larry wasn't really doing anything, so she teamed up with him to go find Harry. And Larry is dealing with his own stuff here, with more flashback memories of his son, and finally it's an actual happy memory with his son Paul. But there's not really anything big on developments with that storyline, at least not yet, so that's why he's mixed in with Jane in this episode, because he didn't really do much. Yeah, so they arrive at the farm where Kay grew up, and in real life, not the underground. But Jane goes to the well, and she's digging and crawling around in the mud down there in the bottom of the well, and she's looking for Harry until she realizes there is this rock specifically placed in the wall. So she removes that rock, and it looks like Harry. So she grabs out Harry, the stuffed teddy bear, which is great, so she finally found him. He was just sitting there in that hole in the wall. But there's also something else sitting in there. Apparently, there is a letter there that was actually written by Miranda. So apparently one of the times when Kay was a child and Miranda took over as primary, she wrote this letter to the father about all the bad things, basically, and how Kay deserves better and everything, and all that stuff. But then all of a sudden we flash to the underground, where we see that Jane is there talking to Miranda, and Jane is finally like, I don't know why I ever doubted you, I 100% trust you now. But apparently Miranda doesn't trust Jane, and never did, because Miranda takes Harry, throws him back down the well, and then on top of that also pushes Jane down the well. So yeah, she kind of just revealed herself there. But then things get even crazier when Jane actually gets down there, and she's just floating there in the water. And we see the dead bodies of Baby Doll and Fiery Katie. I think that's the official name of that fire personality. Like, their dead bodies are just floating there. So it turns out, just as I theorized, Miranda is doing something shady down there, and those personalities are not being reborn like she said. They're just dead, like, officially. So now that Jane knows the truth, actually, it's going to be interesting how she's going to be able to convince the other personalities what's really going on here, because they all believe Miranda, but they don't know about her dark side. So I'll be interested to see if they actually wrap up that storyline this season, or if they save it for season 3. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But now, moving on to another storyline that didn't have anything really to do with fathers and dads. It didn't even have to do with parents in general, because that's actually pretty surprising considering it was about Rita, and she's been having her whole thing going on with her mother, but none of that was really brought up in this episode. So anyway, this storyline in the episode was all about Vic and Rita, or should I say the Beekeeper, because we saw the beginning of the season where Rita wanted to learn how to control her powers, and she wanted to be a superhero and everything, and that's exactly why she went to Vic for advice. And now things are really starting to come full circle here as the season starts to wrap up, and she can now kind of control her powers a lot better. And she has her new superhero identity, the Beekeeper. Oh yeah. And she wants to team up with Vic for their first dynamic duo crime-fighting team-up case thing, whatever. And Vic picks up this newspaper and it says something about a murder, so they go to investigate it. And just a quick side note here, Vic's jacket here that he's wearing, it's pretty dope. I mean, it's really cool, and I actually want that. Like, if I could go buy that, I would go buy that jacket right now, because that's a cool looking jacket. But anyway, they get there where the murder happened and everything, and they found out that it was actually Roni, because they have actual security camera footage of Roni in there, taking care of business, I guess. And things get really taken up a notch at the end of the episode when Vic actually confronts Roni, and she's obviously not too happy about how confronting he is and stuff. So she's like, I'm out of here. And then he tries to stop her, of course, and then it turns into this all-out battle here with, which I really love to see, because the relationship has honestly been getting kind of boring. It's kind of, the same thing every episode, so I like seeing this fight here between the two, and it was really, really cool, especially at the end, how Vic got out his giant cannon arm and everything, and then Roni almost escaped, but then, of course, who else shows up to save the day but none other than the Beekeeper herself. But unfortunately, she kind of just stands there and just lets Roni walk right by her. So I don't know why that happened, but it did. But now let's get into the real father-daughter relationship of this episode with my two favorite storylines of the episode. They're all about the father-daughter relationship. And the first one I'm going to be talking about is Cliff and Clara, because we saw at the end of last episode that Clara got the tape. She knows everything about what happened to her father and everything, and she showed up at Doom Manor. So this episode is really seeing them get to bond and grow a relationship and connection here. And obviously she's pregnant, so that definitely puts an interesting spin on things. But I love how when Cliff was making pancakes, he accidentally fried up that finger that he got a couple episodes ago, thinking it was a sausage, but you don't want to eat that sausage. I'm glad they didn't. And I wonder if that storyline is also going to be wrapped up before the end of the season, because not really much has been going on with that. Not much development, because he got the finger, he wants to be able to touch things and feel things, but there hasn't really been anything else going on there, and there's only one episode left. So yeah, and then we find out that Clara is actually getting married. So I mean, you'd think she would have gotten married before she was pregnant, but sometimes things don't go as planned, I guess. So she tells her father a little bit about the person she's marrying. Her name is Melissa, but Clara calls her Mel for short, so that's adorable, I guess. But we've never met her, so maybe we'll see her in the next episode. Probably not, but I don't know, maybe. maybe not. I just really enjoyed seeing this relationship here, though, between Cliff and Clara, and then at the very end of the storyline, it featured her actually inviting him to her wedding, which is a very big step because he's been out of her life for over 30 years now. And now they're finally back together again, and he can finally be involved in her life officially, just as he's always wanted to be since the beginning of season 1, which is really great and amazing to see here, and I really love this. But now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the big storyline of the episode with the big, huge cliffhanger leading into the season finale, is all about Niles and Dorothy, because we saw at the end of last episode that Niles has made this very big decision, a very reluctant decision, but he knows that he has to rid the world of Dorothy because she was too dangerous, and every moment she's alive is putting the world at risk. So they have to do something, and in this episode we find out that they actually have a time limit on this, and they have to do something before she grows up. So I guess basically once she becomes a teenager, then that's not good. But I mean, if you think about it, she's around like 100 or 200 years old, but she's basically 12 years old, so somewhere around there. So we actually see the beginning of this episode when she goes to the gas station wherever, and she's in the bathroom, that she is definitely starting to grow up, and she's starting to deal with some lady things, and of course she's super confused because she doesn't have a mother or really any female figure in her life to teach her about this kind of stuff, and it's obviously something hard to go through without someone there. And I mean, obviously I'm a guy, so I don't have experience with this, but from what I've heard, it's not a very fun experience. But it is nice to see the relationship here between Dorothy and the complete stranger, the lady that worked there at the store, and how she was like, us ladies gotta stick together and all that stuff. So that was an interesting relationship there. And it was nice to see, but at the same time Dorothy is growing up, so that's also a bad thing, because that means Candlemaker is also growing up and growing in power, and the curse, it's happening. But Niles wants to say goodbye to Dorothy, and he thinks the best way of doing that is making it Dorothy Day, and doing literally anything she wants. So she wants to go to the amusement park, and at first I was like, whoa, I mean, that didn't work out very well the first time, because we saw the beginning of the beginning of this season, where she was at like the circus amusement park type thing, and that was where all the people died. I mean, to be fair, she was in a cage, but it still didn't work out too well. But obviously, things did kind of work out pretty well here until the end. But it's like they're going on a bunch of rides, she's winning prizes, Niles is just cruising around with his wheelchair with a bunch of balloons strapped to the back, and everything, pretty much goes well until Dorothy starts seeing flashes of her mother holding these boots or shoes, and it's super confusing, like, what is the significance of those boots? And she keeps saying, like, you're ready and stuff like that, like, what are the boots for, hairy lady? And it's I don't know, we still don't know by the end of the episode, but the hallucinations and things really take a step up when Dorothy goes to this funhouse type thing, and she actually kind of gets like transported into that Arctic area where we saw Niles go last week, and her mother is there, and she just keeps saying you're ready and it's time, and then all of a sudden she disappears, and then the Candlemaker rises out of the flames, and then it just starts chasing her until Dorothy does eventually wake up, and she realizes it was basically a dream, even though she wasn't actually sleeping, but she's definitely on alert here and keeping an eye out for what's going on around her. But she doesn't really notice what's going on with her father here throughout the episode, because we see that he's an old dude, he's dying, and we know that he keeps coughing up blood and stuff. So she notices, but she doesn't really get that concerned, and she doesn't realize that he's he's like days away from dying. But she goes off to buy some giant lollipops while her father is confronted by Willoughby Kipling, who we actually saw earlier in this episode is part of this cult that wears these yellow robes and hoods, and it's led by a hamster. So that's weird, but also really cool. So he shows up at the end, and he's like, it's time, we gotta do this before it's too late. And, of course, Niles is like, no, this is my daughter. I'll decide when it's too late and when the time is. But, turns out they are late. It's too late because all of a sudden the statue next to Willoughby Kipling, it just starts suddenly melting like candle wax, and then we flash over to Dorothy, and she's got the lollipop, so she's all happy about that. But then everything around them, including these lollipops, just start melting, and everybody is freaking out here, and basically this means that the Candlemaker has been unleashed on the world, and he is at his most powerful, and he is probably going to destroy the world, or at least try to. And yeah, so that's not good, but I really love this cliffhanger though. It really makes me even more excited for next week's episode, seeing as it is the season finale, and we're going to see the Doom Patrol finally wrap up their storylines in this season, and also, of course, take on the Candlemaker. And one of the first trailers for the season that actually showed that they were wearing their comic-accurate red and white Doom Patrol uniforms, which I'm super excited to be seeing in the next episode. But what do you guys think about this? What do you think about this episode? And what do you think will happen in the next episode? The final episode of Doom Patrol Season 2. So let me know down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video. And hit that subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the DC life.